This talk is about guidelines for integrating value-sensitive design into responsible AI toolkits, which is the result of a collaboration between Imperial College London and Nokia Bell Labs, alongside my colleagues Marios, Daniele, and Celine. So I'm sure we've all seen these types of headlines in the news lately, and they've been driven by the latest advances in generative AI. But even before these recent developments, researchers and practitioners across the human-computer interaction and computer science communities have been concerned with a whole range of issues with AI systems, ranging from data biases to the fact that many of these are opaque black box algorithms. Nevertheless, there's been all kinds of research coming out of the HCI and responsible AI communities, which have resulted in many different forms of interventions to try and create more responsible AI. These interventions have included checklists and question lists to ensure AI systems deployed are responsible and ethical, guidelines and recommendations for how to design and build RAI, software and programs that lower the barrier to entry to build AI systems and democratize their creation, design processes and frameworks for practitioners to follow steps and activities to create RAI in a structured way, and design tools and toolkits that provide highly practical means for practitioners to embed RAI practices in their work. In our work, we look at toolkits especially, and RAI toolkits are fascinating because they're largely based off of theoretical and conceptual frameworks, and yet they bring them to life in practical and interactive ways to support practitioners and their collaborators to meaningfully engage with and create more RAI. As a result, these toolkits have underlying RAI values such as fairness, transparency, privacy, and so on. So it's very interesting and an underexplored area to think about how RAI toolkits operationalize these values and how effective they are at doing so. Two fields that explore these types of questions are that of value-sensitive design and responsible AI, and each space comes with its own set of core values, some that seem to overlap and some that don't, and this is what inspired our research. So before I dig in, I'll provide a bit more context. Value-sensitive design is a framework that helps embed human values into technologies through three types of investigations that are conceptual, empirical, and technical. Applying value-sensitive design to AI has been proven to provide several benefits. And that being said, there's been no focus on incorporating value-sensitive design principles and values when designing responsible AI toolkits. But what are RAI toolkits in the first place? So the aim of these toolkits is to provide a form of practical interventions for practitioners to use. Even though these practical interventions are based off of theoretical and conceptual frameworks such as value-sensitive design, very little work has been done to understand how well they operationalize these core concepts. And while they come in a variety of shapes and sizes that have been comprehensively reviewed and taxonomized, our work is specifically interested in exploring which design decisions in RAI toolkits relate to the operationalization of VSD's core principles and in what ways. So we explore two research questions looking at how VSD and RAI values align and how RAI toolkits incorporate VSD principles in their design by looking at things such as support for collaboration and learning. So firstly, we wanted to select RAI toolkits to explore these questions. Starting from the review I mentioned earlier and an online repository of RAI tools, we began selecting toolkits that are specifically designed for AI technical practitioners, so developers, data scientists, and so on. We then excluded toolkits from institutes that focused on regulation, resulting in 21 candidate toolkits. Then we excluded toolkits that lacked evidence of recent use from things like signs of community use or practitioner-made resource lists. And finally, we selected toolkits with comparable design features that support collaboration and learning support. So things like graphics and illustration, provocative questions and cues, and so on. And the resulting toolkits were the Nokia AI Design Toolkit and the MIT's AI blind spot cards. So the Nokia Responsible AI Toolkit comes in the form of an interactive website. Users are given cues that fall under different categories and are encouraged to respond to those cues, which they can skip and come back to later. It also generates a report with all the users' answers in the end. The MIT blind spot cards are originally a deck of cards provided as a PDF, but to increase interactivity and therefore comparability with the Nokia RAI toolkit, we converted this to a PowerPoint presentation where the first slide shows an overview of all the cards, and once you click on a card, it shows a more detailed view of the front and back of that card. We then held 4 workshops Each one was 2.5 hours long, with a total of 17 early career AI researchers. These workshops were made up of 3 activities split up by 2 breaks and ended with participants filling an open question survey. The workshop had 2 activities. The first activity was value mapping. This was derived from affinity mapping and card sorting, and the idea was that participants were given all the cues from the Nokia toolkit and asked to assign each cue to the relevant value-sensitive design values they felt were applicable. Only the Nokia toolkit was used because it had a larger number of cards and because the MIT blind spot cards explicitly mentioned values such as fairness, accountability, and so on, which defeated the purpose of the exercise. This was done individually at first, and then answers were discussed until a consensus was reached. This was also carried out by the researchers prior to the workshops in order to compare both sets and explore the extent of alignment between the sets of values. The second activity was to use one of the 2 toolkits to open-endedly brainstorm considerations needed to build an AI responsibly, given a healthcare-related design brief. Half of the participants used the Nokia toolkit, then the MIT toolkit, and the other half used the opposite order to counterbalance any learning effects. Going back to our 2 research questions, the first research question aligns with the first activity of the workshop, and we found that a consensus was reached in terms of aligning the 2 sets of values in most cases, except for cases when the RAI values of accountability and transparency were involved. For accountability, the lack of consensus might be explained by recent empirical evidence showing that different groups of people define responsible AI values differently. This suggests that seemingly similar sets of values should not be used interchangeably without a thorough understanding of their fundamental differences. For transparency, which value-sensitive design often refers to as trust, the 2 are slightly different. For example, it has been shown that transparency can both enable and violate trust depending on contextual values, especially in relation to AI systems, while value-sensitive design itself has been used as a facilitator for transparency despite not explicitly including the value in its original set. Given the significance of transparency in AI systems and its established distinction from trust, we suggest future work might explore expanding and updating value-sensitive design's set of core values to incorporate current responsible AI research. Then for our second research question, this corresponds to activity 2. From the workshop discussions, ideas produced by participants, and their answers to the survey, we conducted thematic analysis to synthesize our findings into 6 design recommendations to consider when designing responsible AI toolkits in order to incorporate value-sensitive design principles more effectively. These include encouraging collaboration with stakeholders by providing open-ended cues that can then open up discussions and unrestricted brainstorming, increasing practitioners' empathy by providing real-world examples and case studies that mention how stakeholders are impacted and affected by the technologies they build, supporting iteration when creating AI systems by designing the toolkit in a way that allows for multi-directional navigation and generalizability to the considerations needed at different stages of the design process, supporting a practitioner's ability to reflect and the toolkit's ability to produce meaningful outcomes by customizing or personalizing the feedback given in response to the answers provided, when applicable. Supporting the creation of shared knowledge across toolkit users and actionability moving forward by designing the toolkit in a way that creates or exports accessible documentation or other relevant outcomes. And finally, reducing toolkit users' cognitive load by incorporating value-sensitive design values into the resources provided, whether cues, questions, examples, and so on, to help them design with values in mind. So in conclusion, to wrap things up, our study offers 2 contributions. Firstly, we recommend future work to explore adapting value-sensitive design's core values to better align with RAI research, and we also offer 6 practical guidelines for those designing responsible AI toolkits to improve their value sensitivity and align with the principles of value-sensitive design.